For me, I don't know. This one fell flat. Hey guys, welcome back. So I've got a somewhat good one for you guys today. I actually don't know if I should be calling this a good one or not. I had seen the new live action How to Train Your Dragon 2025 version. And initially, like, I think it's been like in the works, not in the works, but we've known, like fans have known for like the past 2 to 3 years maybe. I think the first time that I saw news of this was either in 2022 or 2023, somewhere around there. And of course I was excited because I was like, okay, so they're going to bring it back. They're going to try a live action remake of this. I sort of wanted this to come back, not necessarily come back, but I just wanted to remember the nostalgia of the original film. For me, I don't know. This one fell flat. I broke it down to a couple categories to compare the two films and the two versions. So I'm going to compare the environment, characters, narrative, and the overall shot quality. I might go into the use of score and everything. That stayed the same. It wasn't necessarily same in the structure-wise, like how the movie had played out, and how the score was used in the movie. But the original score, I believe, was kept from, what I watched and the clips that I watched back and everything. So as I get into the first comparison of the environment-wise, I actually wanted to do a little bit of research to see where the filming and like where most of this filming took place that wasn't necessarily like the CGI or like the use of green screens and everything, but to see like where exactly they filmed. It looks like they used parts of Northern Ireland, the UK, and Belfast, which I think Belfast is in Ireland or maybe it's in England. I don't know where Belfast is, but they used Belfast, a city, within that filming. And really, there was no problem with this. I looked at the animation. I saw that they used a Scottish influence as well as the, I think, Faroe Islands, which is near Denmark or owned by Denmark. But overall, they used a Scottish influence in the animated version. You could see that there were like island parts or like islands within like the filming, or they were filming on an island, which I guess Northern Ireland, Scotland, like the UK itself is an island. But anyway, and of course a crew is going to come in, they're going to create props, they're going to, tidy things up or add or modify certain scenery or like the landscape and everything to make it appropriate for the movie. Now, unlike the actual real world, like the actual Earth environment, I was disappointed with how the rest of the sets looked. This looked very stage-like to me, like you would have at like a Broadway play. I'm not an expert in Broadway by any means, but I think that the audience isn't really looking towards the props. They're more looking towards like the acting part of it. It's not something to be taken as seriously as like an actual feature film. But I was disappointed because this literally looked like a play or a stage set. It had a very plasticky look to it. It looked fake. It just didn't look real. And I don't know if that's the look they were going for either. Something that, while I was even watching the movie and I compared this to, was the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series. And I know that there was definitely special effects, and there was definitely CGI like used within that and everything for like the backgrounds and green screen and everything. But a lot of like the actual costume, like for the characters, but then like the scenery and how everything was dressed and the props and the stage setting and everything, it looked very authentic and it looked real. Like it looked like there were real materials used, whether that be steel or wood or different kinds of wood. But in this case, you look at the village and you look at the weapons that the Vikings are using, and it just looks very not prop-like, but like I said, it looks very plasticky and fake and not necessarily like foam swords or axes, but it sort of looked like cardboard or just like something inflated, not like an actual real metal weapon. And I was also disappointed because this to me made it look more lower budget like, and I don't know how that could be the case because they spent a good chunk of money on this movie, hundreds of millions on this movie. So I don't know, why, if they had the appropriate funds for it, which of course they did, I don't know why it would look like this. I can only imagine that Dean DeBlas maybe thought that it was more appropriate to make this more fantasy-like, and maybe he liked that stage-like Broadway atmosphere. But it seems like a lot of live actions have turned into this, and not only the How to Train Your Dragon remake, but like the other Disney remakes as well. Now, I do actually have pictures and videos that I had saw and that I had watched and viewed of the crew actually building the sets and building the particular sets like that were different from each other, and creating those props. And I'm not saying like anybody did a bad job with like building them, but the overall look and the main appearance of them was just not very appealing to me if they were wanting this to be really lifelike. Now, compared to the animation is supposed to be creative. It's supposed to be exaggerated. It's supposed to be vibrant. It's supposed to be colorful. It's supposed to have a fantasy-like look. It's supposed to be realistic. Like you're supposed to actually see humans, like of Hiccup and of Astrid and like of all the characters and everything. It's supposed to look like something that we're able to see, you know, that we're able to see in the real world. Now, watching the movie specifically from a narrative standpoint, the narrative linear standpoint, everything was on point. You know, I don't think that they actually missed anything besides maybe some of the scenes that they cut or modified. You could tell what everything was and what, you know, every scene was supposed to be and what everything was supposed to look like. There was no problem with that. Now, second and more importantly, or most importantly, I would say, and something that I noticed at first, even when I was seeing the trailers of the movie, is the adaptation of the characters and the costumes. But when I went to the theater and I watched this and I saw the characters and their costumes and how they adapted that, there was really no adaptation of that. The costumes were different. And I know that I necessarily can't focus on the costumes being exactly the same in the entire of the group of Hiccup's friends, of Hiccup, of Astrid, of Stoic, of Gobber, of them being completely accurate. But some of them, they just, like 80% of the characters of the main cast, they just changed. They changed the costumes completely. For example, with starting with Ruff and Tough Nut, the twins, I believe in the animated version they had more of like a greenish, like shirts, pants, a mixture of like green and brown for their main clothing. But now it was more of like a purplish gray mix. I mean, moving to Fish Legs, even Fish Legs had more of like a bear pelt or like, you know, bear skin on, or maybe moose skin or something like that. But like that's what he was dressed with, at least with his top wise. And I don't think it really showed him having pants or trousers or, you know, whatever you want to call them. But if so, they were brown, or they were maybe like a darker brown or so. But this is just completely different. Now, Gobber was, I would say, pretty accurate. I don't remember much from Gobber, but again, like with his shoulder pads, or I don't know, it's not necessarily a vest. I'm just gonna call it a shoulder pad, for lack of words. But even that, like, I don't know if that's sheepskin. It looks more like sheepskin to me, but it didn't look accurate. It didn't look real. It wasn't even like a problem with the fluffiness or like the plushness or anything like that. It just didn't. It looked like fake skin. And then lastly, Astrid, you know, the shoulder pads are accurate, the boots are okay and everything, but they changed like her main color. So she's got more of like a blue or like indigo / teal like top, and I don't even know what they did with the skirt. I think the skirt is gone, it looks like and then the legging, like, or like the tighter pants, like, I don't know. I thought that was either green or blue, or kind of like a matching set, like of the top and the bottoms. But now this is a red, or it's like a maroonish kind of red, and it looks like they got rid of the skirt. Like the skirt was her thing. It was part of her identity. Now, with the biggest change of Astrid, the live action Astrid, Nico Parker, being of mixed race, half African American and I believe half white, that was the biggest change that I saw. Continuing with the more diverse cast, that was Julian Dennison, I believe, who played Fish Legs, and I think he's of. And then Rough Nut and Tough Nut are still white, but they're not typical blonde, Nordic, blue-eyed, green-eyed Vikings. It's more of a change with the redhead, ginger-like look. I want to say this carefully and I want to be respectful about it. Personally, from the changes that I saw, I didn't necessarily like what they did with the live action. And my reasoning behind that is I'm one of those people who, if I see an original version, whether it be live action initially or it's a, original animation with a live action adaptation, I just want to see accuracy. I want to see complete accuracy whenever studios do this. Now, I know with this take, and Dean had even said this, that he wanted it to be more diverse and he wanted to have a more diverse main cast. And not only just for the main cast, but he wanted Burke as a whole to be more diverse. Now, as an example, and this might not make sense to everybody, but say if you took Princess and the Frog. Princess and the Frog is a Disney animated film. It was African American centered in the South, in Louisiana, for the setting of that movie. And I enjoyed Princess and the Frog a lot. I thought it was a great take. Even when I was younger, I didn't see that. I didn't recognize it just for the race. I never thought once, oh, this character would have been better white. When I look at How to Train Your Dragon and I have the thoughts and the reaction on this, it's just coming from, why didn't they keep it original? And I know why they probably didn't keep it original, and I don't want to get too much into that specifically. I was more concerned with the acting. Starting out with Hiccup, Mason Thames, his acting style was more of a Tom Holland. His voice sounds more like Tom Holland, at least to me. Of course, he's not Jay Baruchel. He's not him. He's not going to speak like him. Finding an actor that sounds like Hiccup, I think, was important, and have a more nasally sounding voice to focus on, I think, would have been better. Personally, I didn't think that he looked like Hiccup. I don't think he necessarily played Hiccup well, and I'm not saying that he's a bad actor. I just wouldn't have chosen him as Hiccup. The only scenes that I enjoyed was actually the action scenes where he was involved, and laughter or humor was brought up and everything. I just don't think that he captured who Hiccup actually was and how Jay had played him originally. But I was mostly disappointed with Gobber. Now, Nick Frost, I don't know what he had starred in previously before this. Now, I don't really know why they would have chosen Nick Frost to play Gobber, because I don't think he translated anything from the original Gobber. Craig Ferguson voiced Gobber in the animated original. When they switched to Nick Frost for this live action, I really don't know why. All of the humor and the wittiness and the goofiness of Gobber, the animated Gobber of Craig, was taken out. I didn't see any humorous moments of this live action Gobber. I didn't see that. In the animated original, we know that Gobber was more of a friendly figure to Hiccup, and not saying that he wasn't going to discipline or scold him for those reasons, because we had seen that as well. Moving on to the twins, Rough and Tough Nut, there weren't a lot of jokes between them. There wasn't a lot of fighting between them. It just didn't seem believable to me. It just didn't seem like they were committed to those parts. There wasn't a lot of those goofy, enjoyable, even annoying moments with them. Moving on to Snotlout and Gabriel Howell, who played him and who portrayed him. It was just the same thing for me. Snotlout in the original was annoying, and he was, I don't want to say he was cringy in the original, but he was, his character was a guy that didn't care. He was arrogant, he was confident, he was, didn't really care about anyone, especially in the first one, in that, he had a character arc and everything, and grew more in those, the sequel and the third movie, of course. Even with him, a lack of jokes and a lack of those snarky remarks that he always used to do. And it just didn't seem like Snotlout. Moving to Nico Parker, who played Astrid. I think that she played Astrid well from the physical part. I think she was in shape and able to do the stunts and do the physical parts of the acting. I think she did well with all of that. But even with Nico, like I don't want to call any of these people bad actors. I just don't think they were great choices for the film. It didn't seem like she was as mean and annoyed with Hiccup in the live action as she was in the original. It didn't seem like she had that intense hatred towards him, which again, you having that in the original is not a bad thing. There's going to be a character arc, and there was. With Nico trying to portray Astrid, any of the interactions, especially that she had with Mason, with Hiccup, I didn't find them believable. I think that Gerard, by far, was the best at playing stoic and the best among all of the actors. I think he made it believable, and I just think that he knew, because he had played stoic in all of the movies. He literally is stoic. He's able to make those appropriate pauses and put emphasis on certain words. Watching the whole movie, I think that they stuck with the narrative pretty well. There were definitely scenes that were either extended or modified or just completely, removed and taken out. But I would say for like 95% of it, it was accurate. With the fifth and final point of the review, the only real dislike that I had with the shot quality and the use of the CGI is, I don't know if it was the resolution or the filters or the ratio. I don't know if that had any effect on it. Why this looked more fantasy-like with the use of the stages and the props. I don't know if that had to do with making it more fabricated and fantasy-like, and it was just those parts maybe had contributed to it. But besides that, like the actual shot quality, the action shots, I didn't have a problem with those. I thought they were fine. They were accurate. I think that they did the best that they could with what they had, especially for Toothless and the other dragons. I definitely think that Toothless was the best looking dragon, and rightfully so. He kind of had to be, because he was the main star in the movie besides Hiccup. All right, so the part that probably most of you were waiting for the live action, the budget was 150 million. And honestly, I thought this was more of like a lower budget even for a live action film, but I think that it was an appropriate budget for this. Opening weekend grossed 84 million for US and Canada, actual gross of the US and Canada, but I saw that it only was up to 93 million. So it was around an 11 million jump for the opening weekend between those couple of days that we saw. Gross worldwide was around roughly 206 million. But I was a little shocked by this, because I thought it would have had a higher profit. I wouldn't call the live action a failure, but I would say it did not hold up well compared to the original. So would I call it a failure? No, financially wise, I wouldn't call it a failure, but I would definitely call this a flop. To conclude the review, I just wanted to leave you guys with like the future plans that I had saw and that I had researched. The How to Train Your Dragon 2 live action adaptation was already in production, but I was really confused that they would announce that before the first one even came out. And I was even more confused because why would they do a live action of the sequel, even when Dean himself said in an interview that he wasn't a fan of the live action adaptation.
I continue to not be a fan of live action remakes because they often miss the soul. They don't have the benefit of the years of iteration that went into making those animation classics, and too often they feel like they are lesser versions of the animated movie to me. And as an animator, I do feel very protective of the medium, and I'm very proud of these movies.
But DeBlas also voiced that he wants to expand the franchise and expand it culturally, expand, with series, or I don't think necessarily more films, but he wants to introduce more dragons, more settings, and more cultures. And I don't know how I feel about this, because we've already had an animated franchise. We just got a live action adaptation. There's already been a TV series. What I would give for the film, for rating wise, I'd say probably a 4.5, or like somewhere 4.5 or below. It's definitely between a 4 and a 4.5. But that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think. Put your thoughts, put your reactions in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Discussion is good, and I'd like to discuss it further with you. If you want to share your opinions or your reaction to this, remember to like and of course subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.